Welcome to this concluding event of the 2021 Bio Conference, at which we announce the winner of the 2021 Plutarch Award. I am Linda Level, President of Bio. I hope you have enjoyed the conference, and let's all hope that we can gather in person a year from now at the 2022 conference. I am pleased to announce one important change to the conference next year. We will be inviting proposals for panels from Bio members. You will receive more information about that in the weeks to come. You can also expect some format changes to the biographer's craft over the summer. Now, not to keep you in suspense much longer, I will introduce Kate Buford, who chaired the Plutarch Committee this year. Her committee of 5 esteemed biographers examined close to 200 books. Kate can perhaps tell us exactly how many. I'd like to thank Kate and the committee, and will now turn to Kate to announce the finalists and the winner. Kate?
Linda, I'm delighted to be here. We finally got to the end of this wonderful project, and it has been quite a project, particularly in this problematic year of 2020. There were publishing snafus, there were the pandemic, not least. Printers went out of business, there were shipping delays, there were all sorts of factors that affected books, including biographies, and we had to deal with all of them. There were about, I'd say, between 150 and 200 books. Maybe Michael would, you had that spreadsheet, Michael, but a lot of books that we had to go through. My living room is bursting with them. I have to commend the stellar work of this committee, plowing through all of these books, meeting every month, discussing our favorites, coming up with the ones we liked, recommended, or did not like, did not recommend. We were always aware that we were a committee of biographers choosing the best biography of 2020. We thus judged looking through a different prism, as agents like to say, than that used for more general book awards. We think our list of winners reflects that professional point of view, as you'll see. I would like to name the other members of the committee. Ray Shepard in Boston, Holly Van Lubin, first in Los Angeles and now in Pennsylvania, Barbara Burkhart in Washington, DC, and Andrew Lowney in London. They will each briefly speak to a different aspect of this process before we announce the winner. So we're going to keep you in suspense just a little longer, and you'll be able to start guessing by the end of their remarks which one is going to be the winner. So I would like to start with Holly Van Lubin.
Thank you so much, Kate, both for that introduction and for your leadership throughout. I think I could confidently speak for all of us that we were just so grateful to be working with you on this and being led by you. And I think we all miss our meetings despite how crazy this year has been. And I have to begin, I think also for all of us, with just a word of gratitude for everyone who wrote biography and published biography, especially in this unprecedented year on so many levels. I think we as biographers understand some aspects of that plight. It takes years sometimes to get these books into the world, and sometimes we are led only by passion or curiosity, and we don't always have the same amount of support. Not every book has the same process to get out there, and so we absolutely felt that as writers of biography ourselves as we held all of these books and considered them. And we acknowledge just how much additional pressure has been on biographers and all writers this year in particular as they grapple with industry problems and societal problems and all sorts of things of those natures. So it was also very comforting to hold these books in such a critical year. I think as we worried about our own lives or the lives of those we love, both because of things going on politically, culturally, the entire pandemic aspect of things, of course, also factored in. It was very reassuring to hold these great stories of lives in our hands and see the arc of these lives and how these really amazing subjects made the most of the broken world that they had to grapple with as well. And so our task was, on one hand, very comforting and very pleasurable, but also it was incredibly difficult because these are all wonderful books and there were no easy decisions necessarily. And so just in acknowledgement of all the difficulties that happened in 2020, there was also a lot of stellar work that came out. We can never fully understand what world we will publish these books into. But I guess if there was anything going for the cohort of 2020 this year, is that they ended up in the hands of this little committee of biographers who had perhaps more time than ever to read great books. So thank you for that. We greatly appreciate these efforts. And I personally will miss this experience, but I'm very, very pleased with the work that we were able to accomplish together. And so I leave it to my esteemed colleagues to discuss that a little bit more.
Thank you, Holly, very much for that lovely overview. I think you speak for all of us. I would now like to shift to Ray Shepard, who is going to break with our Plutarch tradition this year to speak of a special citation that was added this year for Begin Again. Ray?
The committee is pleased to announce its first ever special citation, and it goes to Eddie S. Glaude for his Begin Again, James Baldwin's America and its lessons for our own. Though not a biography that could be a Plutarch contender, the book spoke like none other in 2020 to the unprecedented year through which we as judges functioned. Glaude summons James Baldwin's penetrating voice and eyes and reminds us of the post-Civil War, post-civil rights betrayals of racial justice. He warns against slipping into a 21st century betrayal unless we begin again and heed Baldwin's prophetic words. Glaude elegantly and forcefully delivers a splendid mashup of intellectual biography, narrative history, literary and social criticism, vis-a-vis our continued unwillingness to form a more perfect union. With this special citation, the Plutarch Committee acknowledges Glaude's contribution to the writer's art of shining a light into the darkness and exposing the lurking ghosts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, very much. That was terrific. I'd now like to shift to Andrew Lowney in London. Our man in London is going to speak to the 5 semi-finalists with a brief description of each.
Well, I found this a fascinating exercise. I read a lot of biography as an agent and researching my own books, but to read a series of books I probably wouldn't normally have read and to enjoy them so much was a very enlightening experience. I'd like to talk about 5 of the books that didn't quite make it, but were very close, and we had certainly long discussions about them. We were trying to get a balance between subject areas, between approaches, to balance the list in terms of particular genre. And I think we've managed to do that. The first book I want to talk about was Abraham Lincoln in His Times by David Reynolds, a classic cradle to grave biography, but we thought a very strong narrative, scrupulous scholarship, and for a subject that's often written about, we felt it was a very fresh take. Another book about a very familiar character was Volker Ullrich's book on Hitler. This is the second volume of an acclaimed 2-volume life. Again, a subject well covered, but we thought very elegantly written, nuanced, with a lot of new information and insight. The third book was Music by Max Steiner, The Epic Life of Hollywood's Most Influential Composer by Stephen Smith. Not an obvious book in some ways for a prize, but certainly I found it, and it's not the sort of book I would normally have read, brought this period of Hollywood very much to life. This was a slightly less well-known character, and I think he wrote extremely well about the music and about its impact in Hollywood. The Power of Adrian Rich by Hilary Holiday was again a strong contender. This is the first biography of this groundbreaking poet and an extraordinary figure who certainly deserves a life, and was a book that we all very much enjoyed. And then our fifth book was another unusual book, The Planter of Modern Life, Louis Bromfield and the Seeds of the Food Revolution. Slightly different subject area. Louis Bromfield was a very famous member of the Lost Generation, and I suppose one of the early environmental champions and advocate of sustainable farming. And we felt that Stephen Heyman had very much brought this slightly unusual subject to life and very much merited its place in the top 10. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And now to up the suspense, we turn to Barbara Burkhart, who will read a brief description of the 4 remaining finalists.
Yes, and I will join everyone before I read these to say again, Kate, thank you so much for your leadership in this committee. And just to all of you, it was really a joyfully collegial committee, probably the best committee I've ever served on. And it was a joy to receive all these books in the mail. It was a joy to talk with them, about them with all of you. So thank you so much. So these are the top 4 outside of our winner. The first, The Dead Are Arising, The Life of Malcolm X by Les Payne and Tamara Payne. 3 decades of research and interviews with Malcolm's family, friends, associates, and enemies result in a biography that requires the reader to reassess their understanding of Malcolm X as he evolved from a Negro orphan on the White Plains of Nebraska and Michigan, sparked an urban awakening of the ghetto poor and the incarcerated, and entered the pantheon of Black heroes who died to make America safer for African Americans. The second of this 4 is about our former president, Jimmy Carter, His Very Best, Jimmy Carter, A Life by Jonathan Alter, published by Simon & Schuster. This intriguing, thoughtful work uses scrupulous attention to detail and never before accessed sources to convey a more complete and sophisticated understanding of Jimmy Carter than has ever been offered before. His Very Best busts myths, corrects fallacies, shows the receipts, and grips the reader. The title is as much an interpretation of Carter's personal philosophy as it is an accurate epithet for this biography of him. The next one is Lincoln on the Verge, 13 Days to Washington by Ted Widmer, Simon & Schuster. With fresh research and novelistic prose, Widmer presents Lincoln, both human and transcendent, on this historic journey by train from Illinois to his first inauguration in Washington, D.C. Cinematic in scope, richly detailed and immediate, the journey unfolds as both a dangerous race against time and a portrait of a deeply divided nation. Rarely, we thought, does a biography offer such compelling and new insights about a figure so firmly fixed in our cultural consciousness. And finally, These Fevered Days, 10 Pivotal Moments in the Making of Emily Dickinson by Martha Ackman. Ackman penned part of this biography in the bedroom where Dickinson slept and worked. Infuses this fresh portrait with intimacy using the lens of 10 transformative moments to frame this well-told story. The days recounted here denote both private and public milestones, her first publication of a poem, her death, and quieter instances of intellectual and emotional growth that formed her inner life and her art. So those are the next 4 that these are all such outstanding books. It was really hard to choose, but there they are for you.
Thank you, Barbara, very much. And now, to end this suspense, I am very pleased to announce that the winner of the Best Biography for 2020 is A.N. Andrew Wilson for The Mystery of Charles Dickens. I will say briefly, before turning the floor over to Andrew, some of the reasons we chose this book. This was a dark horse title that came in towards the end of 2020 and captivated us. As biographers, we were struck by how passionately and elegantly Andrew manipulated the genre, the form, to get at the mystery of Dickens's craft. He interjected himself, Andrew himself, which is tricky, as we know, but as Holly said, it lands, it works. And it brought the whole story deeply home at the end. It may seem quirky to have chosen a biography, of a 19th century English novelist as the Plutarch winner in this unprecedented year that we've all spoken of. But Dickens proved to be directly relevant to the issues that faced us in 2020. Income disparity, poverty, the tragedies inflicted by the Industrial Revolution on people without any safety net, and so on. The mystery of how Dickens transmuted the travails of his own childhood into great art was the challenge and the mystery of this biography. That this complicated, flawed, damaged person, Dickens, could yet create great novels that revolve around the virtue of kindness was deeply humane. And we give this award to Andrew Wilson because we judge that he met that biographical challenge superbly. Indeed, we decided he had created a biographer's biography. So I turn the floor over to you, Andrew Wilson, the winner.
Well, if the technology is working, I just want to say that I'm left speechless to have been put in this wonderful company, both your company, my fellow biographers who've been judging this award, but also the other wonderful books on the long list. When you think of the last biography named, Emily Dickinson, it's almost impossible to think of anybody more different from Emily Dickinson than her near namesake, Charles Dickens. Her inner life so secret, her output so secret and so, for the most part, unpublished up in Amherst, while he, Charles Dickens, was hitting the United States, almost literally speaking, and treating it like a kind of road show for his own egomania and his own passionate concerns about not only things which were going on inside him, which was Emily Dickinson's great achievement, but of course what was going on in the world. I can't say how grateful I am to you for having chosen this book, and how much, if it doesn't sound arrogant, how much I agree that during this last year or two, during which we've lived through so many extraordinary things in our world, that you've chosen, not me, but Charles Dickens to celebrate. Because as you say, although he seems like a character from the past, I was constantly arrested by how much he is our contemporary, how much he realizes that we carry around in ourselves our own childhoods, which never leave us. The inner child is somebody who is always directing us. And also, if I may say so without commenting at all on current political leaders or recently departed political leaders, Dickens has this, I find, very consoling perception on the world that however evil it may be and however badly run it may be, there's always an element of comic grotesquerie which somehow manages to redeem life. Certainly I found him, you mentioned it, I brought myself in, I found as an unhappy child. By reading Dickens, I realized that an awful lot of these terrible figures who torment us, both in public life and in our private lives, are also richly comic. And I think that when you look at the list, funnily enough, that you've drawn up, when you think of Hitler, possibly the most monstrous political character ever depicted, and biographers return again and again to the mystery of Adolf Hitler. One of the things which kept people going while he was alive, both in Germany, think of the novels of Hans Fallada, and throughout the world, think of Charlie Chaplin's great film, The Great Dictator, was to be able to see that as well as being an utter monster, he was also, without realizing it, of course, grotesquely comic. And I think Dickens's combined comic sense and charitable sense is something that we passionately need in our world. So that's one of the many reasons why I feel humbled and grateful to my fellow biographers for having chosen me for this great award. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Andrew Wilson, for winning the 2021 Plutarch Award. And thank you for your very inspiring remarks. I, for one, am going to rush out and buy the book as soon as possible and read it. What a high note with which to end this conference. Please, everyone, join me in a round of virtual applause for A.N. Wilson, The Mystery of Charles Dickens.